Welcome back to the Racking Focus podcast. I'm Josiah Blizzard.
And I'm John Doyle, and we're here again at the United Artists Cinema in King of Prussia, the Regal Cinema here to see Men in Black International.
Yes, you didn't give me the memo on the sunglasses, but, you know, it's all right. It's all right. Are you excited to see this film or no?
I am. Here you go.
There we go.
All right, there we go.
We'll just put them on over my regular glasses.
Right there.
There
I think I'm excited to see it. There's one thing in the trailer that's been bothering me, and we'll see if it destroys the film for me.
Okay.
But otherwise, I'm pretty excited about
All
seeing
right.
the chemistry we should see on the screen tonight.
Likewise, except minus the thing in the trailer. So,
Okay,
let's go.
Good. All right, yeah, let's watch.
You're listening to the Racking Focus podcast.
Well, and we're in the car.
Yeah, okay, so we always forget. Spoilers.
Spoilers.
We always forget, and I'm sorry if we pissed anybody off.
Yeah, today we're going to spoil, I'm sure, pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. All right, what did you think? Tell me your thoughts.
You know, I would say my immediate response to this is, it's a completely acceptable experience of filmmaking, but it neither dazzled me nor really fully disappointed me.
That's like the best way to describe that film, because it's by no means like an amazing movie. You have to go see it, but you should not see it because it's exactly what you were promised in the trailer, and exactly what you were promised based on previous films in this series. I think. Would you agree with that?
I think that's right.
Yeah.
It's the first movie we've seen, save for Endgame, where I feel like the trailer is what
it was
the movie
accurate.
was.
Yeah.
Without giving away things that we needed to be even marginally surprised
Right.
about, even though there's hardly anything surprising in the
this film,
2 hours of film.
Almost nothing surprising. Yeah, it was pretty much as cliche potentially as you get with even with the twist of Liam Neeson's character H being the mole, right? I was like, they're making you think Agent C is the mole, but there's gonna be a curveball. It's not really a curveball. I mean, I guess it is. If you know the pitcher's gonna throw a curveball, it's not like you're in the dark about it. It's still a curveball. You can just hit it easier knowing.
Right.
So, and that was pretty much what it was. I was like, that's not surprising at all. I mean, I'm glad they did it. It would have been boring if agency. Although maybe it would have been I don't know. It just depends.
It would have been a cheat, easier story.
Yeah.
I mean, at least they made an effort to have these characters have relationships. Mm-hmm. And they did set up a potential sequel. Like, certainly they're laying in for a sequel with this. Whether or not that materializes is immaterial. What really matters is that they were putting pieces in place,
right,
so that they could move forward.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think it's like a completely middle of the road summer blockbuster.
But that's exactly it.
But I don't know if that's any different than any other Men in Black film.
It's not. Well, 'cause that's something I wanted to talk about was the tonality of the film.
Okay, yeah, we should definitely talk about the tonality.
Because so you have tone, and their tone is exactly what the other films have been. So we're going through, we have Men in Black 1, 2, and 3, and then this is 4, right? This is the first film that we've seen without Will Smith,
right,
and Tommy Lee Jones, I believe, right? The first 3 were just those two characters. We did have an Emma Thompson reprisal of her role from 3. I really liked Men in Black 3. I don't know if you've seen 3. I really enjoyed Men in Black 3. Men in Black 2 stunk, and I really like Men in Black, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice to see them carry over that tonality, the same kind of goofy humor. They started fresh, like Will Smith being recruited into. They didn't need to do as much backstory, which was nice.
And they abbreviated all that too, which I thought was a smart move. Yeah. They gave us beats we recognized, so we knew where we were, but they didn't bog us down in it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And there's a few Easter eggs in there which were great from the other films. But yeah, the tonality stuck through. Like, if you were to watch all of these movies back to back to back to back, it would feel like the same trilogy series of films. And I think that's important, especially when it's coming down to trailer and marketing. We've talked about marketing, which is a weird thing to talk about when you're reviewing films because you don't think about it.
But it has impact.
It has impact because we hated Godzilla. We hated Dark Phoenix. And that's maybe not necessarily like because of the marketing, but perhaps part of it is. They make you believe that it's going to be a different type of movie, and then it's not that film. But it's also about how serious are you taking yourself.
Right.
This film clearly is just like, let's just have fun. This is not going to be anything deep necessarily. There's some themes in there I think that were great, and on a deeper level we could unpack that. But I could just ramble on, but the tonality stuck. How much can you see under the sunglasses?
You know what? I can't see at all without my glasses. So I have to be honest. I'm just looking in a direction. There is something there. It's well lit by the light in front of us. At some point, I'm going to have to switch, but I don't know where my glasses are.
I can hand them
literally
to you.
Will not be able to see them,
great.
so I need to do it.
Yeah, but okay. Well, the tonality of the film. So is the film good or bad? That's what you're reaching.
Is the film good or bad? Yeah.
That's the hard question to answer, I think, because technically every film that's being made now, yeah, you can see much better.
It's really bright.
The technicality of the filmmaking in every production at this point is just off the charts.
Exactly.
Right? Like you're looking, like the location scout probably did a heck of a job on this film because we were bouncing everywhere, and if it wasn't the location scout doing a lot of work, it was the backdrop artists and the painters and the
production designers
and all of those people.
Yeah.
CGI artists doing their work, making us feel like we were in Marrakesh, making us feel like we were in Naples, making us feel like we were in London, and they were probably shooting on a soundstage somewhere in London or in LA or something. But technically, every film is just so insane now, the amount of work that goes into it. So I feel like I can't break this down as a good film. Like, sure, the cinematography was okay. Like, it was exactly what I expected it to be. So if I'm going to say if this is a good film or not, it comes down to story again and again and again. That's what we've discussed with Dark Phoenix. It's about story. Godzilla, it's about writing and story, and wishing they just completely went a different... I'm still disappointed in Godzilla, guys. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That's okay.
You just keep making enemies.
I know. I'm sorry, Brandon. I'm sorry. But that's the other thing too, is Godzilla and Dark Phoenix, you've had there's just been like, there's been good Godzilla films, and there's been good X-Men films. Men in Black, I feel like, it's just kind of like stayed in their lane. They haven't tried anything crazy, haven't tried to do anything that's like out of the box creative necessarily as far as story. I guess Man in Black 3 was a success. That was kind of a back to the past time travel, right? They did some time travel.
Yeah. But still working within the idea of flash forward. This movie utilizes time travel, right? Except it's just, we just shift around as in the real time. It's not some timeline breaking activity. Right. And the first one does the same thing. There's that same idea of where we are and where we are in the universe.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know. This movie's hard to kind of determine if this is a good or bad film. I mean, I would rate it as I enjoyed it, like a 6 out of 10. Like, it was a good experience. I'd watch the movie again.
Yeah,
I can't say that for Dark Phoenix.
It's certainly watchable, right? Yeah. And I'd be more likely to watch Dark Phoenix than I would to watch Godzilla again, and I love Godzilla movies. But I would watch this again. I would watch it with my wife on a Saturday night on HBO or on Hulu or Netflix or wherever it lands.
I'm going to get up and probably grab some food and use the bathroom while the movie's on, because I don't care that much. But it's enjoyable to watch, that's for sure. And maybe that's... us being able to not talk about this film on a deep level, I feel like, so far, we've been talking for almost 10 minutes, and we haven't really broken anything down yet. May just say that the movie's really not that great, or it's so middle of the road that we can't nitpick so much, and we can't praise it so much. I think the things they did well...
Yeah, that's what I want to hear.
What I really liked was the creativity that they can... have with the aliens, and like, I loved Rebecca Ferguson's third arm in her back. Like, I think that was pretty creative. And you think about like, how can we make a fight scene interesting? Well, let's give a girl a third arm out of her back, and like, that's, now you have another thing that you can use. So I don't know, I like the creativity. It's probably so much fun to be in the writing room talking about these ideas. Well,
and I think probably they're dumping things off to special effects people and saying, we need some interesting alien ideas. What do you think you can create now with the technology you have?
Right.
Because there were a couple of aliens in this film, the sort of eye-headed creature, and the first woman who had her thing for Agent, give it to me, H.
Is that H?
He's H.
Yeah. Oh, I messed up then. Earlier I said Agent H. It was Agent T that.
T, right.
High T, yeah.
High T. So Agent H, when that time reversing, slowing down.
Right.
Those things are all stuff that someone said, oh, there's a thing we can do visually to make a person look real.
Right.
Because this movie does a nice job at doing the cantina all the time, right?
It's
the Star Wars cantina all the time. And it mixes some practical, but majority of it, right, is
CG,
stuff that's being created by CG.
You don't care how real it looks, to be honest. You don't care that the CGI is potentially really not realistic because it's just part of the fun, I think. It's part of the universe that they've built in. I'm going
to check something. Keep talking.
Oh, okay. Good. Do it. Are you rolling?
I am.
Okay, good.
No, I was much more concerned about
it's shifting.
Shifting.
My
like your height. You're always tall. No, you're good.
Sick.
You were good. You're really good.
The alien that she went searching for when she discovered I think it was named Jimmy or something, the green alien. He didn't look real at all.
Nope.
And it was totally okay.
Absolutely.
These creatures from outer space were almost cartoony, which is great. You had you mentioned on the way into the film that you had a big worry about Kumail Nanjiani's character.
I did.
Pawnee. What did you think? Did you hate him? Did you love him? Did you want? You can't use that language. Did you?
I can.
You can.
Some
okay.
Of that. So I want to say
you were worried he would ruin the movie.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately the reason I worry about him ruining the movie is it's a gimmick, right? It's legitimately just a gimmick,
right?
And so he's not integral to anything in the story except the biggest laugh moment of the movie, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But for us, at least, that's the biggest laugh movie in the film, a moment in the film. But the thing I want to say is that those creatures, for me, become a distraction from the actors being able to do their work. Because the rhythm of good comedy can be broken and good action can be broken by the need to have the voiceover actor inserted in the middle with some small figure. The character was vastly different than I expected. I thought potentially the opening creature, who we then see later on, was going to be that figure, and it wasn't, and that was a relief to me. It's all derivative, right? Pawnee is completely derivative.
Yeah,
we've seen Pawnee in Kubo. We've seen Pawnee. It's not.
He's been
the gags worked, so they're simple, but they work.
He's just that character who pops up to give a little bit of filler dialogue, to give another dynamic to. I'll be honest, if he wasn't there, it would have felt a little empty. They would have had to do the writing would have had to be very, very different. I liked him. There was some good lines that he had. It was comedic. I really liked Kumail Nanjiani, so I was.
Well, he certainly didn't do what I was worried he was going to do, which was just become the toy. Right. Sometimes characters like that feel like they're just a toy, and in Star Wars, BB-8 doesn't become that. Right. R2-D2 isn't that.
Right.
I always worry about those characters becoming that figure. Yeah. And it didn't happen. So whoever learned that lesson, and Sony is, it's a danger place for Sony to be making the decision to say, we got to have something in there that we can sell.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It worked fine for me.
Yeah, he would look great as an ornament on a Christmas tree.
Absolutely. And I would have no doubt we're going to see,
we'll see it, right?
Ornaments, and there's going to be...
He was certainly lovable. I really liked the character. I didn't even think about him being a part of. I wasn't worried about him going in until you mentioned it. I was like, oh, maybe he might ruin this film a little bit. But no, he was totally fine. So I also wish we had. Here's a nitpick, I guess. I wish we got a little bit further insight into those twins. Because I think the twins were really great. I was worried this movie was going to suffer from too many villains. Too many antagonists, not sure who the main villain was in the film. And it didn't end up being that for me, thankfully. But I was worried that they were just going to keep bouncing around between these twins, this mole, this Riza character person. I was just afraid that there was going to be too many people playing the game. And ultimately, you can't do that unless you're Game of Thrones and you have a series of 10 episodes that are 1 hour long, if in a 2-hour film, packed into a 2-hour film. So I wish we got deeper insight to their characters, who they were, what ultimately they wanted. If we did get that, then obviously the twist would have been ruined for us a little bit, but it would have been nice to see them a little bit more.
But they were beautifully rendered.
They were amazing.
I think
best effects in the
absolutely
100%. The best effects, the best looking characters in the entire film.
I could have watched more and more action from them straight through.
I would love a short on who they are, their characters.
Well, and they're a race, right? So we could definitively see that. Again, they were beautifully rendered. Their power was beautifully rendered. The melting human images were lovely. And one of the things you said before is they don't have to be completely realistic. It feels like rubber, sort of, but it works, and it's interesting. I thought they were great. I thought their intro in the beginning was, I had a little trepidation, a little nervousness about that, but then it sort of came together, and I thought they looked beautiful.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing here's another issue that I had too. The first time we see them, they pretty much melt this dude, who I feel like they become, right. They take on his persona, his image, look, right. Yeah. Melt him. And then chuck him off a building. I don't know if you heard me. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, all right. And like the stakes just went through the roof. Because I was wondering, like, when is this danger going to present itself? And then it was more danger than I don't know if we've seen killing like that
with the bug guy in the first.
The bug guy,
he's pretty awful. For sure.
Yeah, I don't know if we see it as much visually, right?
Right, because he's the skin stealer, right? So there's that vulgarity of that.
Yeah.
But this was something else, right?
Right. Yeah, it's just Vincent D'Onofrio just walking around.
Exactly.
Man, so yeah, they just chucked the melted body off the roof, and I was like, partially thought the tonality was going to go in a different direction, and they reeled it back in, but. Yeah, very interesting. I think we got a lot of Men in Black culture again. Like what they do every film is they just keep introducing more culture, and I love that. I love seeing, London division, New York division. I like the Hyperloop kind of gag, right? And with Elon being an alien, I thought that was pretty clever. Anyway.
So one of the things I would love to have seen them do more, and they didn't, and they could have done this without damaging tone, is it leaned a little more heavily into a James Bond attitude. There were a pile of sequences where they felt like James Bond movie. The going to see RZA, it looked like a James Bond film, and they just didn't lean into it completely.
No, there could have been some good gags, right? Is what you're saying too.
And Hemsworth could have done the work to really play that. Yeah. This felt like an audition for a Bond comedy for him.
Yes.
And Tessa Thompson and they have spectacular chemistry.
Yeah.
I don't care if they fall in love, right? I'm not interested in that. They certainly are playing with that tease throughout the film, but I am interested in seeing them work off of each other, and they really do work off of each other well. Yeah. That was my concern about Pawnee, is that inserting a new figure into that dynamic, but you still got their chemistry, and she is such a versatile actress.
Yeah, she's amazing.
He really has shown some amazing range.
I think Thor Ragnarok really pushed him, thankfully Taika took it in that direction.
Or just opened the door for him to be who
exactly.
he is.
Yeah, so now he can be cast in multiple roles rather than just the hot hunk, right?
Yeah.
So,
and he still gets to play and make fun of the hot hunk. Like they go for that, which I thought was great. But I would have loved to see him a little. There was so many things here that felt like a Bond movie.
Yeah.
That to lean into that a little bit more. And I wonder if in an earlier draft that wasn't part of the conversation, or if directorially at some point there wasn't a conversation about let's it looks Bondy, let's go a little more Bondy with it. But I would have loved to have seen them gone farther with that. It makes sense to where they were in the story, but I don't feel like that's a weakness.
No,
it's just an unfulfilled moment that I saw as a student of film as I'm watching it.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with that. I kind of felt the same thing a little bit. I did think Bond multiple times, and they just never did lean into that.
Hemsworth is hilarious.
Yeah.
And charming.
Yeah. How much do you think was pre-written? How much do you think they let them just ad-lib scenes?
So I would say if there's a moment without significant special effects, there may have been ad-libbing.
Fixing the bike.
Fixing the bike. playing that together. Yeah. There's 3 actors, a voice actor and 2 actors who are playing together. I think there's a lot going on in a scene like that. I think it's all about how much spectacle is getting in the way of the ability to ad-lib. You know, when we talk about Endgame or something like that where there's ad-libbing, that's happening in scenes where people are in a room talking.
Right.
You're not ad-libbing when you're on the battlefield.
Thanos,
there's just no way you can't match that.
No.
You may be ad-libbing when you're Tony Stark, spoilers for Endgame, dying. You may be ad-libbing there, but you're not ad-libbing otherwise. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's something that we've talked about a little bit is spectacle over character. This film does not do that.
It does not do that.
I was way more connected to the characters than I was visually stunned.
And they're not deep characters.
No.
Right?
No.
But they're real figures, right?
Yeah, right. They feel realistic in
and
real life.
And they live within a framing of character that obviously is
and in the tonality of the Men in Black universe.
Exactly.
So, real quick, let's talk about the fuzzy blue dude. They seated him real early in the beginning.
Exactly.
And you get payoff at the end.
You do.
I forgot about him. I knew the second that he hopped out that window, I was like, he's going to be back later. He's coming back later. And I totally forgot. I didn't even recognize him when we saw him walk up to Hemsworth. Did you realize?
I did not then.
Did not connect the pieces. They made him look drastically different, but while still looking exactly like you'd expect him to look.
Yeah, and the CG guys did a great job of when he understood he was with Molly, that he there was that alteration in his eyes and his cheeks, and then to play the joke of he's a violent bad guy was great.
Yeah,
that was a really good choice.
Yeah, loved it. We have a few minutes left. Let's talk about the only thing that made both of us laugh out loud in the film. And that was...
And we're going to spoil a moment here that I do not know if they thought this was what they were doing, but...
It might not even be funny.
It's funny.
But it's hilarious after watching the Hobbs and Shaw trailer.
So before you watch this film, no matter when, you watch the Hobbs and Shaw trailer 3 times. And we have laughed at every time we've watched a trailer at this one specific moment. Josiah, what is the moment?
It's literally just The Rock holding 2 chains, one in each hand, holding a helicopter to the car that he's connected to.
That's coming off a cliff.
Yeah, that's coming off a cliff. He alone is able to hold the helicopter to the car.
Great groan.
He's amazing. He's the best. He's the only person that can save the world by holding a helicopter to a car, and he does it in a skyscraper, where he just holds up a bridge that he's standing on. He does it in every film. I feel like he has to. It's got to be contractual.
And Pawnee gets...
we're going to find the 2 shots for you. If we can find them, we're going to put them on the screen. Because it is shot for shot the same thing.
Funny.
It's amazing. I was laughing.
I was roaring out loud. And we roar at the trailer. Like, to be clear, we laugh at that Hobbs and Shaw trailer every single time. It's unbelievable. And we feel like we don't have to watch Hobbs and Shaw, even though we will, because we've seen it throughout the trailer. But that moment recreated by a little tiny
alien
may well be the best trolling of
it's incredible.
A movie.
It's incredible.
The Rock ever. Just so funny.
That was the best moment in the film.
It was absolutely wonderful. And again, it tells that sometimes seeing a movie is about the people watching it in the theater as opposed to the movie itself. Really quickly, things I want to react to real quick, and we keep an eye on time. First is music was really pretty good. The only thing I didn't like was there was one bit under Pawnee where it was this sort of dorky, like comedic music that was completely out of school with the rest of the film. I thought the use of the Men in Black theme throughout it was great and really well done and subtly done and orchestrated in different ways. I liked that a lot.
Can I comment on the amazing POV camera that they used for Pawnee?
Oh, yeah?
Multiple times. And it had to be like an 8mm or something, because they would cut to it and they'd be, inches probably from this lens. Loved it. Loved the use of them talking to camera, except talking to Pawnee, POV style. Kind of a cool little thing. It didn't feel out of place. Didn't feel part of the film either. But it just...
Well, it's in a great way to integrate what is essentially a puppet into a living world. The important thing about puppets, whenever you're working with them, is that you touch, you feel, you make direct eye contact with them. You have to be looking at the puppet. You can't be demonstrating the puppet to people, or the puppet is just an extension of your hand. And so having them look into his eyes while he talked was great.
That was kind of nice. I like that. It was totally different. You'll know exactly.
Yeah, stylistically.
Yeah, it stands out, which is kind of weird for cinematography to do. Anyway, what else do you want to react to?
I thought that that the callbacks to other films, the being on who's driving, which side, and the fact
the
that
big
this
red
time,
button,
big red button. This time the driver's the steering wheel is on the wrong side on purpose. It's not a gag.
Yeah,
like there was tons of things where they called back and they found a different way to approach it.
Yep.
And it's always good in a writer's room to know that someone who's doing something that essentially is ultimately like a remake of the other films. That's our time.
She also pulls up the small gun that Will Smith does not want to shoot, and then he does, and it blows things up. Yeah. And then obviously the little aliens that come off the subway. So, yeah, a few callbacks to the previous films. Are they going to make a fifth one?
If this does well, they're going to make a fifth one.
I'm going to say that they're going to, because I think this is... I haven't read reviews yet. We'll do that in the next segment, but I want to say that there's going to be a fifth one coming out. I can't imagine they're going to stop at 4 after the success of 3. It wasn't worse than 2. It wasn't as good as 1 or 3. I would put this as the third best film in probably the series, but I liked it. Again, 6 out of 10 for me. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'll plan it in the same way, 5, 6 out of 10.
Yeah.
But when I say that, that's a rating for it as a film. As an experience of moviegoing, it's the kind of movie that if I'm scrolling through a TV dial, I'm very likely to watch a hunk of.
Right.
Because there's stuff to laugh at. Right. And it's certainly something where I'm going to go home and say to Lisa, you would have enjoyed tonight, if just to stare at Hemsworth, which is a gag literally in the movie. That alien rewinding is what my wife might want to do when we get to that moment. So that's about where I would rate it. Yeah. I'd say that I'm really interested to see what other people think. I'm also really interested in hearing if I can find anything about something from the director or the writers.
Yeah.
I would love to hear what they were thinking as they were developing it. I'll say last but not least, Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth are people we should be continuing to follow. They're great on film, in whatever work they do. I'm never disappointed in them, and that's hard to say.
Yeah. No, it's true. So. I agree with all that. Cool. All right, we're going to take a few days, and we will catch you guys in the next segment.
All right, I'm going to throw my sunglasses back on so I can't see while we start, and off we go. That almost sounded correct. There we go.
Why not?
And now we're here in the studio to talk about Men in Black International, sort of get our couple of days of thought and reflection played out here between the two of us. And I have to say, it's been a couple more days than normal. We're a little late because Josiah had his wisdom teeth extracted on Sunday in a wildly painful experience.
I've had to. Well, the extraction wasn't painful, but he didn't put me under. It was he just drilled me with 5 Novocaine shots on my left side. And I think, so I watched him do it. I watched everything. I was able to kind of respond to him while he was talking. Steph sucked out some of my mouth blood while the assistant left
to do
something.
Your wife was in the room sucking mouth blood out during the operation.
Yeah, it was pretty great. She hated it probably, right? Did you hate it?
It was disgusting.
She said it was disgusting. So that was fun on Sunday. I'm still a little bit swollen. It feels like I have stuff stuck in my teeth, but there's actually no teeth where that stuck is. If I talk too loud...
Wait 1 second. Trigger warning for anyone who has issues with blood or surgery. All right.
If I talk too loud, there's a reverberation that runs up into my eardrum, and I don't know what it is, but it just makes me feel... So I'm also on Vicodin right now, so
this is going to
be a really pointless conversation.
The best podcast we've had. So this is Vicodin friendly, surgery active conversation about Men in Black International. So I'm not exactly sure where you want to start. I know you have at least 1 or 2 things to talk about. I have some things to talk about. Why don't you begin while you have energy?
Okay, so the one thought or 2 thoughts maybe that I had, I can only think of one right now. I told you I had 2. I can only think of one. This was the only film in the franchise that really didn't have a villain. Like a clear-cut villain from beginning to end, right? Like there's always been somebody that they've been up against. This time they're up against themselves. And I kind of missed them having a clear-cut antagonist that had personality because like I mentioned in the first segment was that I was worried they were going to suffer from too many villains, like there's too many bad guys. And I don't want to say they did because I enjoyed how they did it, but I wish that they gave those twins like some personality and that they were maybe the clear-cut villains of the film. But instead, you got them, and then you have Riza, and then you have High T. But really, the Hive was maybe the overarching villain that really didn't exist until the very end. So, there was so payoff, right? For me was, did it pay off well enough for it to actually did it matter? I don't know. I didn't have an emotional response at the end because it just didn't matter because they didn't set it up the right way potentially. They tried to give you an emotional reaction with T was like a father figure to H, but then they blew him up anyway. So I don't know. It would have been nice to have. I don't know what I'm saying. I just miss the clear-cut antagonist, I think, of the film.
Well, and the other movies have more clear-cut antagonists, and those antagonists have more personality.
Yeah.
And one of the things about stealing someone's form is we often end up having to not have personality inside that form, right?
Yeah.
They're masking themselves. So the twins who are taking on the identity of an individual or a physical identity, we end up not having as much personality.
Right.
And, I heard some complaints about the fact that they were smoke and that there was no way to shoot them. And as a result, there was no stress or raising of stakes. And I thought the beauty of the special effects overdid that for me. If they'd had more personality, pathos or the opposite, right, where we have some measure of hatred, but we didn't have that.
Right.
Their actions weren't awful enough. Whereas in the first film, we have someone taking over someone's personality. But they kill them and take their skin.
Right.
And so we're immediately in a position of high stakes and vileness of the character.
Yeah. And he was fun to watch.
I mean, he's fun to watch,
Yeah, he was just so fun to watch. I cannot for the life of me think of what the other thing was that I had to talk about. So,
well, let me say then, while you ponder the thought, one of the things in my 2 days away is that I think this movie's pretty forgettable.
Oh,
and I want to sort of lay that out.
Yeah.
And so, as generous as our review in the car is, and I think our review in the car is generous, it's because we enjoyed it. It's like a roller coaster. You get on a roller coaster, and then it's a different roller coaster, and I've used this metaphor before. And on the roller coaster, you're having a good time. And like in that moment of the roller coaster, it's a ball. And when you get off the roller coaster, it's a ball. But 3 days later, the immediacy of the experience is gone, and the movie doesn't sit with you.
Right.
So I remember the characters, and I remember being fine with it.
Yeah.
But I also don't have any real commitment to the movie. I said to myself, this is a movie I would undoubtedly not purchase.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch it when it's available.
Yeah.
I wouldn't turn away from it.
If this shows up in the $4.99 movie bin on iTunes, because I only buy digital films, I'm probably not going to buy it.
Right.
Because I don't care enough. But I'll watch it on Netflix or watch it on HBO, like you mentioned.
Hulu or whatever,
I'm not going to
wherever
spend
it might
my
be.
money to purchase this movie. So.
It's not going to be a movie I turn off of whatever cable channel it sits on. If I'm going through the dial, I would say, I can watch this while I'm having dinner or whatever it might be. Like.
But only if there's potentially nothing else better on.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Or you don't want to look. And I have the no pressure to look.
It's just on the, right. There may be a Men in Black marathon happening.
The other thing I think, too, and I just want to, I think, so one of the complaints I heard in some of the reviews I looked at was that there was no training sequence. And that training sequence is something that's engaging. And when I watched it, I actually thought the opposite. Removing that was good.
Yeah. Well, you didn't need it because she set up her entire intellectual, all of her intelligence and skill set in the beginning by being able to find them was her training, right? So she'd been training her entire life. And the fact that she was accepted to FBI, CIA, probably a dozen other places as well if they didn't show, just shows that she is skilled enough. They don't need training. She knows how to shoot a gun. She knows how to do whatever tech issues that need teching. I don't know.
And I think that's the choice they made. And I think some of the response that's come has been that is one of the entertaining parts missing. And we do like training sequences in our movies.
Yeah.
But I didn't need it.
I didn't need
it. I'm going to be honest about that. I really didn't. I'm going to stand by that position in these days behind. But I would love to have Tessa Thompson have a little more work to do in the movie.
Yeah.
And I would love to see that. She's a better actress.
It did seem like she was just trailing behind Chris Hemsworth the whole movie, right? Like he was just It was just him doing things and then her fixing his mistakes, pretty much.
Right.
Is essentially what the whole movie comes down to. Someone wrote on Reddit that they didn't like that the only reason those two worked together was because she found him attractive.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I have nothing more to say about that, but I mean,
it's a legitimate conversation
it happens.
piece.
Yeah,
it is so insignificant in the story's movement.
Yeah,
and they didn't play that up. Whatever romance is there at the end.
That's something I liked. Right, was that the attraction was there between the two of them, but they didn't end on a romantic note. And maybe they ended on more of a friendship note than a romanticized note. So I did like that. There would have been major issues if they would have kissed at the end, and that was the end of the film.
Yeah,
I would have had a problem.
Well, then she's submitting, right? And she didn't submit, even though she found them attractive. She didn't submit. She was the aggressor in that situation.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm not uncomfortable with the fact that she was the aggressor, but I can understand the complaint. Like the complaint makes some measure of sense. She did have agency, though. Like I don't want to remove the fact that she as a woman she had agency in the film, and I thought that was great.
Yeah. Okay. So somebody else wrote. Okay. And I agree with them here. They said that one of the best parts of the film was H. It was the opening scene. H neutralizing the couple like 3 times.
Yeah.
Like I thought the movie started off really strong with that, and then it slowly got away from like that. Felt classic Men in Black to me. That opening scene on the Eiffel Tower, making the mistake having to neutralize. Like that's something that Will Smith's character would have had to do multiple times.
Right.
And then they kind of got away from that humor in a way. Like it felt different. Like the tonality of the beginning of that movie felt a little bit different from the rest of the film. And maybe it is because of the Hive and everything that happened, right? It's probably because of the Hive. Because Liam Neeson's character is actually high T at that moment.
And then not
after that,
longer.
It's completely different.
Right.
Because you actually see there's a flash, right? There's a flash in the beginning or at the end of that sequence that happens. And I thought about it. Like that flash happened. I was like, did we just get neuralized as an audience? Did I say neutralized earlier? I probably said neutralized.
It's fine.
Is it neuralized?
It's neuralized,
Neuralized.
I believe. But I'm going to be honest, it's a made-up word, Josiah. We don't have to fret very much. Like, there can be people out there like, you people who are canon folks of Men in Black, good for you, but we're not going to worry about that.
Neuralized, neutralized, they're going to be interchangeable.
Neuralized.
Neuralized.
Sure.
It's
Neutralized sounds like they're gone.
Yeah. Just sapped out of existence. Neuralized, were we neuralized as an audience? And then, in fact, in a way, we kind of were. No, we were. We absolutely were, because we saw everything happen, and we would have seen things happen with him beating the Hive, except we were neuralized with Chris Hemsworth's character as
and the time gap gets us there. What happens with the time gap, right, is that jump moves to Tessa Thompson's character. And that might be a flaw. You might want to jump forward and
we jump back in time, right?
Yeah,
we jump 20 years or 16 years or something like that behind. So I loved that scene, though. I loved the opening scene. I thought it was hilarious. I would have liked to have the whole movie kind of.
What's funny is it's something we've noticed too. I mean, we get into this big arcing conversation we're doing over and over again. One thing's about advertising. The other thing is about opening sequences, which in a lot of these films have been really strong. It's almost like they have a really good idea, and then you run into the problems of the movie.
Right.
And those problems are things you can't escape. Painting yourself into a corner is exciting, and then working your way out can be. Yeah.
Did the movie feel like a first draft? You know, like it's part of it. Like the first scene felt so polished, like they've done multiple pass-throughs on that first scene, and then the rest of the film maybe felt like a first or second draft of the script, and it suffers because maybe there needs to be some additional changes that need to take place, and they just haven't done another pass-through or multiple pass-throughs as they should. So,
and this movie undoubtedly has a much stronger audience control. Like, this has been previewed out to audiences, and that can cause some damage too, right? But one of the things I'll say is I think the pacing of the movie may have been a little slow. And I don't mean that in the actual life of the movie, like the arcing story.
Yeah.
I think in the individual scenes, whether in editing or in directing, the pace could have been picked up a bit, so that we are behind the action. Comedy works often out of surprise, right?
Yeah.
And being behind the action lets us be surprised. And so I remember when they were working through the car, which I liked that scene, pulling all the weapons out of the car.
Oh, loved it. Yeah, it was great.
I think if I would have loved to have been a little more surprised. Let the gadgetry be second to the surprise of the weapon size. So see the gadget work, but then seeing the thing pull out, I lose in that moment the surprise of the weapon popping up in front of me.
Right.
In the first movie, Will Smith with the little gun,
right,
we have an expectation and it's gigantic, right?
Yeah.
Here we have the gigantic gun with the little puff and then the big explosion. That works.
Yeah.
But I think in some of the other places, we were shown more than we needed to. And I don't even think that's about trusting the audience. I think it's just pacing. Which is why, again, it doesn't rise to a film that we are going to put up high in the spectrum.
Yeah.
But it's infinitely viewable.
The movie was, I mean, I had fun watching the movie. I knew I was going to go into a Men in Black film, and it did feel like a Men in Black film. It felt like a reboot in a way. You know, a new trainee comes into the program, and she's tasked on a crazy mission from the start. Very similar to the first Men in Black. It's just you don't have a super old guy training the really young recruit. It's like, yeah. So if you had to guess what the tomato meter is right now for this film, what percentage would you say?
Reviewers or audience?
Let's take a stab at both. What would you say? The
reviewers, I think, is probably low, like 20-30%.
Yeah, it's 24%.
Yeah,
right
the reviewers, I think, are going to nail this thing because it's completely derivative.
Right.
And it's not a great movie. Like when you're rating this, it's so hard, Josiah, because
no, it is.
Like you were saying, like it's in the middle. I'd rate it here, but in the end, as a film, I rate it lower.
Right.
But as an experience, it's not as bad.
You and I are both reviewing as audience and as reviewers because we're both. We're both. We
play both of those roles.
Yeah, and I mean, if we were only reviewers and could only talk about the filmmaking aspect of this and not whether we enjoyed it or not, I sometimes think that's unfair because I think reviewers are unfair because they're disregarding the entire experience sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of the film. So, and as the audience score goes, 65%.
Right.
That's where we sat, 5,
like
6.
Literally, that sounds like the way I feel about it.
Yeah.
That's a really good read, which sometimes Rotten Tomatoes is not a good read, but that feels like a pretty good read.
Yeah, this is pretty on point here.
And there's no one assaulting that, right? There's no like denial of service attack against the movie like you'd have with or Captain Marvel or something like that.
And I think a lot of people were excited for the film and then disappointed when they watched it because you got a guy like F. Gary Gray who comes in and directs the film and you're expecting a high energy piece based on his previous films, and like you're expecting like Men in Black to be The Italian Job or but he comes in and it's just another derivative of the previous films. And this guy says, this is Jake Wilson from The Age, Australia. The uninspired approach of director F. Gary Gray does nothing to mask the staleness of the formula. And like it is, it's just formulaic. Maybe it feels like a cash grab from Sony again to just somebody. I don't know who I was listening to. They said like it just feels like somebody in Sony spun a big wheel that had all of their projects on it and just tossed a dart and it landed on Men in Black. And they're like, yeah, sure, let's see what we can do with a new Men in Black movie because we have nothing as of right now. Let's make something. Let's make something up so we can get some money.
Well, and then let's pull this pair of people who are being used in Marvel so effectively and throw them here. And because I know I wanted to see the two of those folks work together.
Yeah.
I want to say something general about film and this movie and the reviewers in particular. I think one of the things that happens to us today is we have to deal with two problems. One is cost of going to see a movie. So the reviewer becomes important because of your level of investment.
Right.
And then access to movies and other channels. If this was 1950, this would be a great movie.
Yeah.
We'd go see it. It'd be worth the $2 I would pay to go in, even in whatever counter-inflationary cost that would be, because I don't have it on TV.
Right.
I can't see it on TV.
Right.
TV is very limited. Now the access to television and to high-quality television programming makes the stakes higher for movies like this. So with Godzilla, where we were disappointed, painfully disappointed, or Dark Phoenix, where we're sort of seeing on the lower end of the spectrum, and again, I might watch Dark Phoenix again, but still, it breaks down. I'm I'm concerned about telling someone to go see Men in Black in a theater, and certainly in something like IMAX or RPX, where they're going to spend $20 to go. Like, this is a movie to go see on your discount ticket,
right?
Because you got nothing to do on Saturday afternoon, and you should get out of the house and be with people.
Yeah.
And so it's like, because Flash Gordon sucked,
right?
But I will watch Flash Gordon on whatever TNT, TMC.
And you brought up that this would be a great movie in 1950, but part of, I think, cinema in general is that it's always trying to innovate and advance the craft. So you have a film like Citizen Kane that came out in, I don't even know what year that was, 1930s or something.
Late 30s.
Yeah, late 30s. We should probably find that out.
You can find that out.
But like, you ask anybody today, gosh,
Steph, look up when Citizen Kane came out.
Citizen Kane is so boring. I am so bored watching Citizen Kane, but it is a like landmark film. Like it was humongous. One, because Orson Welles. Now I was gonna guess 41, but I didn't want to be wrong. I should have done it. It's the Vicodin.
Yeah, sure.
Sure, that's what it was.
Arrogance is broken down by the Vicodin.
Yeah, that's what it is. Because Orson Welles came in and just did things completely differently than any director's been doing. The use of light, the use of camera. They advanced filmmaking in 1941 for the viewers at home. They're moving cameras across, like the depth of field is ridiculous. Moving cameras through windows. Like there's just things that they're doing. Like they're putting cameras in floors, like creative shots. The lighting is different. Like, so that movie's so boring.
I love it.
It's such a hard time watching the movie. But the same goes for Avatar, right? Again, it's Pocahontas in space, or Dances with Wolves in space. But because they advanced 3D technology, it becomes this landmark piece of cinema. And so it doesn't get pushed aside, regardless of how normal that tech might be now. It was an innovative part of cinema. And so this movie being good back in 1950, absolutely. This film would have been amazing because it would have pushed boundaries and it would have pushed cinema to a new level. And so it's hard for me to say, like, it's hard for me to compare based on the years, right? Because of the advancement that it wouldn't have looked the same.
But I
it wouldn't
think
have
just
been
about
the same.
story, it is perfectly serviceable. And in 1950, you'd go see a perfectly serviceable movie without much risk. But today, it's a high-risk proposition for money, and there's access other places. Right. It's like Jurassic World. No offense to Jurassic World. I'm not seeing that in a movie theater.
Yeah,
and
there's
with
offense.
us we
there
might.
Should be offense.
With
to
us
it.
we might.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm not going to do it. But I sure as heck when it comes on HBO, watch it because I know it's accessible there.
Yeah.
And that transition, like being old enough to have had that transition happen in the early '80s. It's amazing how many things I have chosen not to see in a theater because I know they are ultimately not a movie that I want to spend that money on.
Well, I think most of the movies we're going to this year are movies I wouldn't choose to see in the theater.
Oh, it's amazing.
But because we're going to do these reviews, and it's actually a lot of fun to go.
Exactly.
It's a lot of fun to, like, I would not really want to see, I don't care to see Hobbs and Shaw later this year in theaters. Like, that is 100% on the same lines for me as I'm going to see Skyscraper and Rampage on HBO when it hits later. But we're having so much fun going to see Dark Phoenix tank and Godzilla tank. Actually, Godzilla wasn't any fun.
No, but it was educational, right?
Yeah,
we learned a lot about our experience in a movie theater, and I think that that's great, and that's part of this exploration is this thing about going into the theater. And reviewers, one of the things that happens to reviewers, and this is no slight against them completely, is they see things in a very safe environment, and we are like dummies paying for tickets and going into movies, and as a result we don't know the audience, so we go to Dark Phoenix and afterwards we go to get our reviews and people are willing to talk. We go to see Men in Black and no one walks out of the theater. There's no one to talk to.
I don't know what
afterwards.
They were doing in there.
I have no idea what happened.
They might have gotten sucked into like a wormhole and they're now part of the hive.
I don't have any idea. It was something else.
Maybe we got out of there just in time. I don't know.
But that for me, that's part of the experience. Hearing the person behind us briefly explain the previous films to the person he was sitting with. Those are things that are very interesting as an experience, and I like that about what we're doing. And I want to say to people, like, when we're talking about the films, reviews aren't recommendations for us.
Right.
Where recommendations a separate thing. So like I'd say, don't spend your money in the theater to see this.
Yeah.
But if you want to, like, if you're going to enjoy it, go. Like, that's great.
Right. Our reviews is just to give people an idea of like what we thought, and if you have similar taste to us in films, then you might love or hate this movie, or you might be very middle of the road, like us. Like right now, like if there's nothing else out, sure, go see this movie in theater.
Yeah,
so you want to go to the theater? I don't know what else is out right now.
And if we'll talk about it. But
yeah.
but I mean, I would go with my wife to see this on a Saturday night after we had dinner.
Right.
If I didn't want to go home and sit, like,
right.
And it's fine.
Right.
It's perfectly
Sunday
fine.
matinee. You want to pay cheaper for the ticket? Yeah.
You know, Hemsworth is attractive. My wife will love that.
Yeah.
She'll be like, he looks great, and
right.
There's enough entertainment for me to go to. But our expectations have changed because of our access to film.
Right.
So I have to be conscious of that when I'm reviewing.
For sure.
We should wrap up.
Want to close it up?
Yeah, let's do it. So, review. Let's do one more time. Rating. Just a quick rate.
I'm still gonna go with like a 5 out of 10 for the. Yeah, like it was okay film. I didn't get much out of it. It was fun to watch. I enjoyed myself sitting there. I laughed a few times. It was about it.
I'm right there. Maybe a 4, maybe a 5. My review, my filmmaking side pulls me down, especially in retrospect, especially in relationship to some special effects errors. One of the things we didn't talk about. Yeah. That motorbike sequence was a mess.
Yeah.
So there are some big special effects things. We forgive that in this movie because it's absurd.
Mm-hmm.
But we shouldn't forgive it. And so that pulls me down into the range of a 4. But as an audience experience on the day, the 6 is still the number.
Yeah.
It's like it's enjoyable.
Right.
So that's what I
don't hate myself for going to see it.
Right.
So
cool. Okay, good. So you relax your mouth and I'll finish us off. So we want to thank you folks for joining us today. We really had a great time talking about Men in Black International. Next up for us is The Dead Don't Die. I'm super excited for us to talk about it. I've heard some really horrible things and some really interesting things about the movie. That'll be for us for next week. Again, we want to thank Sam for her editing, Steph for pressing record today for us, and we hope that you enjoyed our conversation. Don't forget to write us a review on Apple Podcasts, where you can find each and every episode we've recorded so far and the ones we're planning for the future. And also remember to check us out on YouTube and leave some kind of comment there. Let us know what you'd like us to see, how you think we're doing. We are available on all sorts of podcasting platforms. You can contact us at rackingfocuspodcast@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Twitter at PodFocus. We're also on Facebook, where we don't do much work at all, and a lovely Instagram page. Go check us out. Find out what's going on. Be a part of our community. So again, from the Racking Focus podcast, I'm John Doyle.
I'm Josiah Blizzard.
And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Racking Focus podcast.